is Austin from awfulmedia.com, and today we're going to pick up where we left off a few days ago on our WordPress theme. We were working on the navigation menu and we didn't get very far. Today we're going to polish the menu a little bit and set up our drop-down menu. If you notice from the menu right here in front of us, I added the few links. I have the home link, then I have a games with a little Unicode symbol there. And all I've done is drag these off to the side, and that makes it the sub-menu of that button right there, of that menu title. So if we were to look at this, go to localhost, this is what we get, and that's not what we want. But what we want is whenever I hover over the games link right there, that these pop up. So how can we do that? We're going to do it in a strictly CSS technique. So we're going to only be using CSS and no JavaScript, no jQuery brought in for this part. But since we are doing a responsive website, we're going to be using a little bit of jQuery to toggle the navigation. So whenever I go down to a certain resolution, we're going to turn the navigation into a button. You can click the button, and then the navigation menu will animate down from that button, and you'll have all your links that way. So we're going to be using jQuery for that, but not for the transition from hidden to visible on the drop-down. So let's get started here. We left off with the CSS reset. And what we have to do is, actually, first of all, I got a comment on the last video. Somebody said they didn't really understand why we used an array. And in a lot of cases, and especially this one, WordPress has a few values that we have to set a value for it to understand, or it will just use a default value. And one of those values is the container class. And setting this as main nav will set the class of the container for this navigation to main nav. And we're changing the tag, the container tag, to nav. And the reason we're using an array is so we can put all of this into one line. We can define all of these values, and there's a lot more, but we don't have any use for them right now. And we can define all these values in a single array and store them all within this function. That's the only use for that right here. And we could go on. We could say comma and define other things, but we don't have to. But anyway, just wanted to clear that up. If you have any questions, let me know and I will try to explain them better than I did, I guess, because the goal of these videos is to teach you something different, something new. And if I'm failing, if you don't learn what you came here to learn, then it's not working. So ask, tell me, I didn't quite get this, I didn't quite get that, and I'll try to explain it. But anyway, back to our style sheet. We're going to define a class for the nav bar. My navigation menu is going to have a background color. That's not how you do it. Of 5CA 5CC. Click Control S, view that, and that's what we get. Beautiful. It's going to have a height of 50 pixels, and I'm going to add a CSS3 box shadow. 2 pixels, 2 pixels, 0, and the color of the shadow, and get rid of that one. Now these are the location of the shadow, and this is the blur. So these are the offsets, the 2 pixel, 2 pixel. So it's going to be 2 pixels down and 2 pixels to the right, and it's going to have 0 feather, 0 blur, or 0 distance, depending on like where the light source is. But that's it doesn't really apply here. It's all just 2D stuff. So it's just the amount of blur that the shadow has, and we want 0. We want a nice hard edge around the shadow. I'm doing so many hand motions to explain this, and you're not getting any of it, but it's fine. So if you view this, that's what we get. Beautiful. But it's not really working with our links because our links are still block, or the list items are still block. We want to set them to inline and get them to span out this way. That's what we're going to do next. We're going to say main nav which again is what we set the value to right here. The container class is main nav, and we're going to say the main nav UL and the main nav LI are going to be display, display, and line. Save that and view that, and there we go. Quickly, let's look at the page source and show you what this menu is actually producing and what we're actually styling with CSS. See, the nav is got a class of main nav, which we defined ourselves, and then inside that we have an unordered list with an ID and a class. And inside that we have a list item, like you normally would. And inside one of these list items, this one right here, we have a UL, an unordered list within a list item. And that is the submenu for this navigation menu. So what we have to do is hide that submenu and only show the submenu whenever the list item parent has been hovered. That sounds kind of confusing, but it's actually pretty simple. It's just a little bit of a complex CSS selector we have to go through. Before we do that, let's style the links. So I'm going to say main nav A. So any anchor tag will receive this style within the main nav. So that means the submenu and the top menu will both receive these styles. I'm going to set the padding real quick. We're going to say 0, 20 pixels, 0, and 20 pixels. Keep in mind, this is not a beginner web design tutorial. This is a WordPress beginner tutorial. If you don't know HTML and you don't know CSS, I'm not really going to take the time to explain every little thing. So check out my last series and the series before that, more specifically if you're a very basic beginner. If you're just starting, I have a basic tutorial series, so be sure to check that out. And then I have a little bit more advanced series where we work in Photoshop and then we take it over to a notepad and flush it out there. And then I'm doing this one, which is for people who want to get into WordPress. Keep that in mind, not a beginner tutorial for web designers. I'm going to make sure there's no underlines. I'm going to say text decoration none. Set the line height to 50 pixels. Now, I said I wouldn't explain everything, but I'm going to explain this. We set the height of our navigation bar to 50 pixels. So if we set the line height of our anchor tag to 50 pixels, that means it's going to be right in the center. Our text, our buttons, our links will be right in the center of our navigation bar. And this is really one of the very few ways to center your text within an element, within a parent, without doing any more hacking and stuff. But we don't like doing that kind of stuff. So this is a way that a lot of people use. There's a couple different ways, but this is the way I use to center text vertically within a menu or within any kind of container. We just match the line height or make it more. It could be 70 pixels, that would work just as well. But it has to be the height or more. It cannot be less, because I mean, just think about it, that wouldn't work. So now if we Control S and view that, they're going to be right in the center. And we're making pretty good progress, actually. Now let's set the color. It's going to be FFF, which is just straight white. And the font family, we're going to make it sans serif. So get rid of those serifs. Don't want any of those serifs. Pretty much the default would be Arial, but we're going to use sans serif as a more general family for that. So we'll most likely select Arial. If you don't have Arial, it'll move on to the next sans serif font installed on your computer. The next thing we're going to do is a hover state for these links. And when we do that is we say a hover. Background. We're going to change the background of the link when you hover over it. We're not going to add an underline. We're not going to change the link color, just the background color. Let's change the background color to 4E91B5. Boom. Now when you hover over it, you get that. But that's not really what we want. We want it to be the full size of that, don't we? And we'll get to that. What we're going to do now is say, oh, I'm not keeping my spacing consistent. And that really bothers me. There we go. Main nav ULA. Now I'll explain this. We're selecting the first unordered list, and then we're going inside of that unordered list, and we are selecting the next unordered list. So if we look in the source, we're going to this unordered list, and then we're going inside that list to this unordered list. So we're styling these anchor tags specifically. Again, I said some of these selections will get a little complex, but it's not that difficult to comprehend. Now these will be the drop-down menu links. So we're styling, and we're styling the drop-down menu links specifically. And I'm doing it in this order because I know what I am going for. So this may not be the order you do it from scratch, but I know what I'm going for in my head. So I'm just writing it out as it flows on the page. So the width of this is going to be about 135 pixels. That's wide. That's how wide the anchor tags will be on the drop-down menu. That'll make sense once we get there. Line height is going to be about 40 pixels or so. We'll probably adjust that. And I know I'm going to want some padding on the top and bottom, so I'm going to say padding 0 and 20 pixels. I want these to display as block. The other ones are going to display as inline because they're within the list items, but I want these anchor tags specifically to display as blocks, so they stack on top of each other below our top level navigation menu. Now we get into a little bit more of a tricky area. We're going to say main nav ULLI. And we're setting the position to relative. That's because we're going to be moving the unordered list off the screen about like 10,000 pixels or so, just so nobody can ever see it. And we could actually just from the start just say, hey, I want this unordered list to display none. But then we could not use a CSS transition when we hover over it. So we want to actually bring it in off the screen and then animate it on using CSS. If we were to display none, we can't animate or transition the display property. So we're going to transition the position property we're going to be using. In this case, probably like top or left or something like that. And we want these list items to float to the left. Within the menu, they're going to float to the left. Try to picture this as we're going about it, because I've not hidden these off the screen yet, so they're still going to be there. And it's a little bit broken, but you'll see that all come together perfectly at the end. Well, not perfectly, but okay, it comes together. And this is where the magic starts to happen. Say main nav UL. So we're selecting the second UL. The UL within a UL. And we only have one UL within a UL, so it has to be that specific one. And we're going to set this position to absolute. Now that's why we set those up there to relative. See? This UL is within this LI. So now we can move this one freely outside of that one. Top is going to be negative 9999999 pixels, however many. And the reason we're doing this, again, I explained it, but we're taking this off the screen. So you cannot see it. They are gone. And this is one of the techniques for doing CSS dropdowns. We could have used left, we could have used right, but I just used top. I don't know why. And we're going to keep it at a very, very high pixel count. That way you know that the person viewing it can never, ever see it. Once at the left to 0, that way it's at the very, very flush side of the list item it's within. The opacity is 0. That's because that's what we're going to animate once it comes on screen. We're going to say, okay, now the opacity is 0. Now let's make the opacity 100 on hover. And the top 0 on hover. See, that's how it all comes together. The background color for this UL is going to be the same as the navigation menu, so it looks like just one whole piece, which was 5CA, 5CC. So Control S and view this. Now you see it's gone. The links are gone. Text align is going to be to the left, because we want the links to the left of the container on the navigation menu. And let's match the box shadow from the navigation bar, the background color, which was 2 pixels, 2 pixels, 0. B5, B5, B5 was the color. Let's not forget our little pound sign thingy. And now we bring that back on the screen. Main, nav, UL. So we're selecting the first UL, LI. Then we're going to say on hover. When you hover that LI, I want the very, very next UL and only the next UL to be affected. Now I have to explain this because this is maybe not something you've used before. The UL, LI, and then you hover over that LI. So it's saying once you hover over the parent LI of this UL right here. So once you hover over this, I want to change the styles of the very next and only the very next UL. Does that make any sense? So you want to change the styles for the very, very next UL once the LI parent has been hovered. And what we're going to do is actually just change the position. Well, the position already is absolute. Well, let's see here. We're going to make the top 100%. And why are we doing that? Because we're going to make sure that it's at the very, very top it can be without being too far. So we can make it 90%, we can make it 150%. But we want it to be at the very, very top it can be, but be only within that container, not go outside of the container, stay in the container, but at the very, very top. Then we're going to change the opacity to 1. So it goes from the 0 opacity to 1. It goes from top being that to top being 100%. Now that's on hover of the LI. Refresh this, and you get the point, but something is going on here that I missed. Okay, so it took me a minute to find my issue, and my issue was a simple typo. Right here we have an extra I. That was making the crazy glitchy thing that was going on there. And also, I did not make the navigation links or just the anchor tags block elements. And we need to do that because actually the anchor tags aren't inline elements. That's why we're not getting the background to be the full height and width that it is defined to be. And also they're not taking up the space they should be. So we're going to make them a block element. And if we view that now, everything should kind of fall right into place. And there we go. We now have a WordPress drop-down navigation menu that is controlled from the administrator panel. How cool is that? So I can just say, well, I don't want this one anymore. I can remove that just like that. Come here and refresh. I don't know why I'm on the category page. And it's gone. Did not have to go into a file and mess around with any code after you've done this, of course. And you can do it all just from the back end of your website. Don't have to touch a single line of HTML to do that. Now, I could not decide if I wanted to use a drop down for my games categories or just kind of list them throughout here, like action, adventure, shooter, puzzle, out through here as a list. And I still don't know, but for now we're going to use the drop down menu. Now in the next part we're going to work on the responsive part of the navigation menu. So you can see it responds the way we would expect it to, but we only have 2 links on the nav bar. So it doesn't really have, we don't have much we have to restyle to make it work. But if we add a couple more links out through here, you'll notice that we're not going to have room for them. So it's going to mess it all up. So what we'll do is once we get down to like right here, we'll convert our navigation menu into a single button. And you will touch the button. I'm assuming you're on a phone or a tablet. Touch the button and it will show your navigation links, and touch the button again and it will hide the navigation links or something like that. We're going to be using JavaScript. We're going to be using the jQuery library and do all that. And it's going to be pretty quick, but it's going to be pretty cool. And it's a very, very effective way to create a responsive navigation menu. I did a tutorial over a responsive navigation menu, but we converted a anchor tag or like a link-based system into a select menu, the HTML select menu. And that's not really ideal because they're really difficult to style. That's pretty much it for this video, though. Let's add another link here. Save that menu. Let's look at that. How cool is that? Notice our hover background is working properly now that we fixed the display issue. And now if we were to resize this, you see it's right on the side of that. But if we add another one, just using random links here, about, add that to the menu, save menu, look at the menu. See, it's there. We go down and it's gone because it fell right down here. But since our navigation menu has a set height, it just kind of falls out of that. We could hide that by saying overflow is hidden, but we want the link there, so we're going to have to deal with that in the next tutorial. Please subscribe for that. We will wrap up the navigation menu, I hope, and move on down the page to the featured slider part. And I don't really know what we're going to do with that, but we are going to do some sort of featured game slider. We'll see. So thank you for watching. Like the video if you liked it. Please leave a comment if you have any questions. I try to answer them. And check out awfulmedia.com for themes and templates and just random things about web design. And I have a user interface, a CSS user interface kit that I am working on. You can go ahead and download that now. It's called Pop UI. Go to awfulmedia.com/pop, P-O-P, and check that out. And I will see you next time.